Welcome back to the No Cat Space post game show. Tyler and Andrew Greer. What a day it's
Late
been.
night.
What a day it's been. But I can't help but notice, Greer, that's a cool shirt you got on.
Beautiful shirt I've got on, folks.
Hey,
Beautiful.
Greer, where did you get that shirt?
Home Field Apparel.
Wow, you mean you could use code NOCAP15 with the description in the description down below to get your first order 15% off on something cool like that? Is that what you're telling me right now?
It's definitely one of the coolest things they've got on their site. No question.
Well, in honor of your shirt, let's talk about two Huskies that we're in it tonight. Obviously, Diana Taurasi. If this is it,
Job well done. This is it. Job well done.
Like, Greg, what I know you've kind of processed your DT feelings, to this point. But if this is it, what are the vibes right now? How is what is
Triumph most of all. This is obviously a player who at 43 years, still could clearly play in this league.
Yeah.
So love to see people going out the way that they want to go out, right? And I can imagine that, the daily grind of being a professional athlete just isn't all that appealing anymore. And I think that is why, if this is it, that's why it's it. You know what I mean? It's just like that grind. Phoenix did the practice court thing for her around All-Star break. She had a vintage performance in game 1 versus Minnesota. Tonight started out hot, faded as the game went. But there was a point in the game where they pulled up just the stats that she leads or is top 5 in like almost every consequential stat. She is in the record books. And I have thoroughly enjoyed every moment of her career over the last, for me personally, 20. I'm telling my own age.
Damn.
Exactly. But yeah, I've enjoyed every moment of it. She's the kind, once in a lifetime kind of player, like a person who just makes you feel something every time she steps on the court.
Yeah.
Job well done. Well earned.
100%.
DT was one of the first people to get me into women's basketball. Growing up in Westchester County, New York, UConn, obviously for us, it was them and Carmelo Anthony's Syracuse. And then you were super tapped into New York City high school basketball, where I am from, right? It's like Mount Vernon, Christ the King, Rice, etc. And the first of 2 athletes to break containment on the women's basketball side in the early 2000s were DT and Lisa Leslie. And I remember that was the first person that I saw that I was like, I want to watch her play basketball. And as that name became synonymous with the W and also with UConn, it made something more meaningful, I think, when Sanaya Chong, who is like 5 minutes away from me in Ossining, gets recruited by UConn, and I'm in high school at the time that Sanaya is, and it's like, wow, like Diana Taurasi's UConn is recruiting somebody out of Westchester County like this, out of Section 1. And it's those little things, right, that when we talk about transformative, transcendent players, like it really just does come down to that. Like, can you get individuals into the game? What they do when they get here, as we've seen this year, is kind of up to them and their level of personal decorum. But the fact that she, I think, in light of the ESPN, the story about ESPN that came out of Mark Shapiro in the early 2000s, vocally being against putting the WNBA on ESPN and put it on ESPN2 and really set back the growth of the league at that time. She, I think, along with that crew in the early 2000s, really were the first group of rookies that came in and kind of saved the league. And what we're seeing now, not just with Caitlin and Angel, but soon with Paige and Juju and Jazzy Davidson and all of them, that was a groundwork that I think started in those early 2000s with those classes and really pushed along by DT and Candace that got the sport back on the right footing, despite the best efforts of some older, more crotchety white males. That in itself is a legacy before we even get to the stuff on the court.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the cool thing. I wish her and Candace would be a little bit more interested in the idea of a send-off, because I think as we talk about the W's history and its issues with storytelling its own history and caretaking its own history properly, I do wish that they had a little bit more interest in the spotlight so we could at least kind of browbeat the W into learning how to properly do this. But if this is how they want to do it, if this is it, it's the definition of doing it on your own terms.
Yeah.
And that's who she's always been.
So, for my dog.
Wraps up for
Diana Taurasi. Like, I have not been on the gatekeeper shit at all this season. I love all of the new energy around the W and women's basketball, but I will say, baby, I've been in the trenches searching for EuroLeague box scores. When, like, just trying to keep up with her career, right?
Yeah.
When she's overseas for months at a time, you know, fucking reading articles, like transcribing articles in French, Russian, just to figure out like what she was up to, because WNBA is only 5 months. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like I applaud like just her level of commitment to the game, because it hasn't been easy when they were locked away in Siberia winning Russian titles and nobody knew a fucking thing about it. You know what I mean? Like, that just goes to show like how much, and you can never question how much she loves the game. And that's what resonates with me the most, is like, I feel like she has given everything she's got to women's basketball.
Yeah, I'm with you. Nike said you can't raise the bar without raising a little hell. She raised a lot of hell.
She was one of the shake the table OGs, man.
She was raising hell. And speaking of people who have people in hell, Napheesa Collier tonight.
Talk about a UConn passing of the torch this evening.
Come on, man.
Good God.
42 points tying Breanna Stewart. There's a lot of Huskies going on. And Angel McCautry. This shirt. No cap 15. But I mean, what Fee has been able to do just in these first 2 games alone, not even talking about the grander season that she's had, has been insane. Like the scoring that she's been able to do is like, I was scrolling timeline. There's like 6 different records that she's broken within this like first round stretch of games. I think for me, what's most impressive is it never seems hard. It seems very easy for Fee. Like you just kind of get the ball in her hands and she has 3 moves on deck ready to go. And it's never feels sped up. It never feels it never feels like it's difficult for her. And it certainly didn't in these 2 games. Like I said, 42 points is ridiculous. She missed the free throw, which she has been shooting so great from the free throw line. She missed the free throw to break the record and get 43. But for y'all, Gray, if you want to start, like for this game with Minnesota, like whether it's Fee specifically or just Minnesota as a whole, like I think we've talked about what makes them special, but what kind of stood out from this game for you?
Yeah. Well, I think they also said something like Fee has the most points over a 2-game span ever.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and the closest is not close. Like, like whatever. I forget the number, but it wasn't close.
So just a cool little thing. But again, another game where it just feels like, yes, of course, on the box score, she ends with 42, but everybody's just doing something to contribute.
Yes.
Everybody's just doing something. Playing really good defense. It seemed like they were going to allow BG to do her thing tonight, but they were really keyed in on everyone else, right? Yeah. They don't want Cloud to have the same game that she had in game 1, right? Mm-hmm. Which ended up making that game a little bit more competitive than they probably wished for, you know? But, you know, this is they have their eyes set on bigger things, and Phoenix was small time. You know what I mean? Like, they know that they got to gear up for Connecticut and then hopefully the eventual winner of Las Vegas and New York. So They just look like a team. Cheryl called the timeout early in the first quarter when they were kind of like grading buckets, not able to get stops, right? And then after that, really, it was all Minnesota after that, pretty much.
Yeah.
So, I know we talked last night about Las Vegas being a team that could flip the switch. I think Minnesota is similar, but in a different way. Where
I know what you're saying. Like
they have a championship gear. If that's like a different way of framing it, I think I look at switch as something that you can only obtain if you are like a past title winner or a repeat title winner, because it's like you can just kind of wake up and do it because you've done it. I do think that the thing you have to have before that is the championship gear, which I think the Lynx have exhibited, which is basically like, all right, stop playing.
Yeah.
And then you go out.
It's sitting up in the seat. Like it's just,
like that's like they have that.
The
Vegas has that. I think the Liberty have the championship gear this year. Remains to be seen, but it'll make for some good stuff.
Good dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, what else can you say about Fee at this point? I mean, I think it would be hilarious if this turned out to be like revenge tour for not getting at least one first place MVP. It's like the Funhouse Mirror version of the
do the opposite. Yeah.
But no, I mean, like we've been saying all year, like if Asia Wilson doesn't put together the greatest WNBA season of all time, like we're talking about her in the MVP tier, right? Like this is an MVP season. She just ended up against a GOAT season. But she has everything that Asia does, man. I mean, like she has incredible footwork, these step throughs, good touch. She can shoot from three. She wipes you out defensively. Her ability to space and move and be versatile offensively opens up all of these lanes. Yep. Super
emphasis on that. Like that kind of goes to what I was saying before. The ease of it, a lot of it is the patience aspect of it.
And
nobody's
never.
Yeah, like the ease with which she plays, like it is on the floor. And you saw it here. Now, granted, like the Mercury are a team that give up a lot of points. Like we've seen this all year with them. They're very much like a hodgepodge in terms of like their roster construction. And as Ari points out in the chat here, Ka Copper has just kind of had this has been a really weird season for Clea Copper. Because it felt like she was going to make that all W first team run like a month and a half into the season, and then it just all kind of fell apart a little bit. So I think we're going to see some changes in Phoenix. I'm just kind of curious what it's going to be. As for the Lynx, I mean, this and the Sun's going to be a great matchup. Like I know that there was a desire for Lynx Fever, and we'll get to Fever Sun in just a minute, but the Lynx were a terrible matchup for the Fever. That shit would have been over in.
They would have
They didn't beat them all year, and the Lynx really didn't they didn't give them
probably pretty
this season. I want to see the Sun, who have a great defense, great backcourt defenders, especially with the way that Courtney Williams and Kayla McBride move around the floor. And AT's physical. We know this. Like they're gonna muck it up, and and the Lynx like to play open. And as we saw in this past series with the Sun and the Fever, the Sun can suffocate you. And now they have a person that can get you the clutch bucket when you need it. If it's not DeWanna Bonner.
Yep.
So that to me is.
I'm intrigued. I'm excited.
I know a lot of people wanted to see the storyline of Caitlin Clark, and if she could do this in year one, these are the best 4 teams in the league, and these are going to be the best semifinals that we're going to have in quite a while.
Yeah, right? Yeah, no, I 100%. I think the biggest thing for me with the Lynx is that the habits that they have are like as a team, like collectively, when it comes to just the flow on offense, the ability to move the ball, like it's just one of the most fluid teams I feel like I've seen, like in a very long time. Like, and I can't get over like what the projection of this team was to begin this season. Like they were a fringe playoff team in a lot of the preseason polls and everything. And like to go from that to where we are now and the way we're talking about them is based on those habits and the foundation that they've been able to build and what they just consistently do. And no matter what the score or the momentum of the game is, they just always seem to rely on those habits. And those are the type of things I trust when I'm like, okay, this is a title favorite. It's habits. And what do you do consistently? And they do all the good things consistently. And very rarely do they make mistakes on a consistent basis. So, I mean, I'm all in on the Lynx, frankly. Like I'm whether you have the MVP performer, you have the defense, you have the ball movement. Like it's all this is a championship team right there. Like it truly is. For Phoenix though, and we can kind of move on to the other game. This is a weird season.
Super weird.
In the sense of kind of similar almost to what we were talking about with Seattle last night, where it's like you built this team for now, like for this time. Like it was never about the regular season for this team. Yet, similar to Seattle, you have the same outcome of going out in the first round, not picking up a playoff win. Obviously, we don't know really what DT exactly has going on. I mean, it's just they're in a weird spot now that I don't really know where they go from here. Obviously, you still have talent on the roster going into next season, but like it's just a weird. It definitely feels worse than Seattle, like 100%.
What's weird is like their vibes feel somewhat better. Like
well, in the
like
interviews, it does kind of seem like that. Yeah,
like that might be the weirdest thing about Phoenix is like on paper, like the vibes are supposed to suck.
Yeah,
like Cloud, Copper, Sophie, DT, BG. That sounds like the exact
nightmare blunt rotation.
Dead ass. It is genuinely the nightmare blood rotation. And somehow, I mean, maybe they all just have like the right amount of asshole that like they all enjoy each other and like can see themselves in the other in that way. But they seem to believe that they're going to get it right. At least that's kind of the vibe that they've given through a lot of these post-game pressers. Natasha Cloud has given major endorsements of Nate Tibbetts. I don't know about Tibbetts still, honestly, but I think I'm curious to see what they decide to do to augment this roster, because I don't think it's at the guard spots anymore that they got to build out. I think you need to get Natasha Mack with a skills trainer on the offensive end. I think she has a good motor. I think she's a really good defensive player, but you need a little bit more on her on the other end. BG's getting up there, and our critique of BG has always been it waxes and wanes in terms of her dominance and when she chooses to assert. This has been a really weird year for Collier Copper, and I wonder if DT's retirement may open up some shots. And I was kind of thinking along like that there's line. A little bit of like, I don't know what to do here when I'm usually the person that shoots a ton. And then Natasha Cloud's just like low key been a revelation like this entire year.
Great. No, like she's been really, really good.
Yeah. So I'm not, weirdly enough, I think it's a worse roster from a talent perspective, but I feel like the vibes are slightly better than Seattle, that maybe this might actually end up working out in the long term. I don't know. Just kind of feels that way.
Yeah. I mean, well, look, they were plus 10 in the win column this year. So, like, I know we gave Coach Riblitz a lot of shit this year, and deservedly so, because, like, you know, he's a man. But
a white man? No.
But I mean, they kind of did turn things around, right? Last year was abysmal. You know what I mean? Obviously, they will, I think, continue to be a destination for free agents because they have all the accoutrements that you need.
The facility is so nice. We got to go see
it.
It's legit.
Yeah. So I think that they, you know, I don't think Matt Ishbia, when you talk about the owners, I just don't think that I don't think they're gonna like fade into obscurity. You know what I mean? I don't think that's what they're about. Right? They brought over guys that had previously worked in the NBA and stuff like that. Tibbetts, you know, if he's, I don't know for sure that he's like the long-term guy, but the person sitting next to him on the bench is Christy Tolliver. So like, I still feel pretty good about what they've got going on in the facility. Cobb, remember, was injured at the end of the regular season.
Yep, true.
The back thing. She just turned 30. Backs are finicky. I know she's out there clearly not moving the way she was moving at the early part of the season. Played in the Olympics and all that. So I think this season, this is a big part of the reason why she's on this team anyway, right? Is to be at a place that has top tier facilities, top tier medical, and it can really treat her like the
opposite of Chicago.
And try to get the most out of the rest of her career. So I think Kai and Cloud, I think they'll be there next year.
Yeah.
BG, like, I think she'll be there in the sense that, like, the CBA is changing or whatever, being upgraded, and there's just the players just stand to make a lot more money. And I don't think she wants to leave before she gets that windfall. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I anticipate her being back in Phoenix as well, but it'll be interesting to see what else they can do.
Yeah.
But I would say, like, all in all, you know, you sent your goat out the right way. You know, I'd still give them like a B- on the season or something like that. Like,
that's fair.
You know, you weren't the favorite in the series.
No.
Not even. No. You know what I'm saying? No, but I don't think anyone was expecting you guys to beat the Minnesota Lynx.
I think it's slightly disappointing, just like relative to what they look like on paper and what we thought the expectation could have been going into the year. But
yeah,
say lovey. We'll see you next year.
Right. If this was it, salute, DT, salute. Hey, I'll tell you. Salute. You're right.
Salute.
That's on me. All I know, I'm surprised Shawnee isn't here for this send off. But.
Read her 5 out about DT, because obviously she talks a ton of shit about my goat, but she knows the real.
Deep down.
And DT was her original favorite player. So fuck everything else she says. She knows ball, and she knows where the bread is buttered.
Yeah. Well, speaking of where the bread is buttered, one a little bit less butter going the rest of the way.
Margarine.
The Indiana Fever have been eliminated. Fade away like America's Next Top Model. And this was a hell of a game. First off, just chaotic throughout the entire way. I want to talk about the end of the game, but we can do general thoughts first, but specifically the last 2 minutes. And I think y'all know what I'm talking about here. We will talk about that, but first off, general thoughts on this game, and then we can get into the very ending and the way the Fever handled the end of this game.
Okay, first and foremost, if we're on the live, and I know we're doing late night, so everyone in here is pretty cool. Y'all are mostly regulars, I'm guessing. But for anybody that comments in the captions after, if you see the replay, be easy on Kelsey Mitchell. Just be respectful and hear about who we're talking about. Just because I feel like it is important to say that, given what the night's discourse has turned into.
Yes, and we're going to get into that as well. But
this is no cap space. We do not sugarcoat. We will talk about play, good, bad, or ugly, but we will do so in the ethically hating, respectful way, and we would ask that y'all do the same. Mm-hmm. With that said, Stephanie White coached her ass off this series, boy. Yes. God damn. The defensive plan for this Fever team was sensational. Now, were the early whistles at the start of this game a little ticky-tack and a little bit slanted one-sided? Sure. But you know what? That's to be expected on the road. There's a famous quote, I think it was Jimmy Johnson, that said it for the University of Miami after they lost in Notre Dame. You don't go to South Bend and leave the game in the officials' hands. And that is kind of whenever I come across a game where the officiating looks like it's stilted toward the home team, I remember that quote. Play well enough that they can't do anything about it. And I know that situation is a little bit different in football than basketball, but the principle still applies because at the end of the day, the Fever were leading by 1 with like 3 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Like they clearly overcame. Now, I think that the Sun are this to me, and the reason that I kind of wanted to get the respect component here is because I wanted to open up this piece of discourse without us getting into weird territory of like coded and worse shit, right? This to me was like late 80s Pistons and Jordan Bulls. It wasn't necessarily the Caitlin Clark rules, but this to me felt so much like the way when you go back into Last Dance, when you go back into Bad Boys, when you go and actually watch the games themselves, it's very reminiscent of what the 80s Bad Boy Pistons did to Jordan's Bulls while Jordan was on the way up. It was like, here's this kid. He's small. We are going to just physical the fuck out of him. And we are going to bully ball and we're going to play the way we play and impose our will. And he is not old enough to do that, nor are his teammates. And, you know, the following year, Jordan gets a little bit better, but they still come up short. And then the third time through, Scottie Pippen shows up. And, you know, Scottie has now grown up, and now the Bulls start to make their run past the Pistons. That's what this felt like in so many different ways, man. Like, this felt like AT playing the role of Rick Mahorn. Like, AB is the Pippen to Caitlin's Jordan here, like, where you need the Bulls. And throughout the game, you almost saw this thing speed run slightly, where it's like they grew up in real time and got accustomed to the physicality and the way this game was going to be played in real time, because in the first quarter, it was utter chaos, and you could tell they were shook. Like, DB lands in Caitlin's landing zone, and Caitlin, like, swipes at her, and they start talking shit, and Lexi starts talking shit to DB. A fan off the side of the court says something to Caitlin. That leads to security coming over. Like, it was very clear that as crazy as the energy was on both ends here, like, the Sun had her up here messed up. And they grew as the game went. But this feels like the first component of that story, where this is the physicality we were talking about, and a lot of people were talking about going into this season, of like, is she going to be prepared for this? Are the Fever going to be prepared for this? And it looked for a period like, no, they would not in game 2. They grew up on the fly and almost managed to steal a second in Connecticut before going back to Gainbridge. But to me, I think this is one of these interesting things where I would almost rather it happen this way. Get this kid a little bit of adversity, man. No reason she should come in and beat everybody up immediately. And I kind of like the idea that we've got some intrigue in her story now, because now she's got someone to go beat next year when the Fever are inevitably back into the playoffs. So a masterclass from Stephanie White. Just a classic bully ball performance from AT. I've been on the record. I'm not the biggest fan of her game. I thought her being all W first team as a pick was poll inertia a little bit, given what her year was. But you know what? Games like this, she comes out and says, even if it's bully ball, even if I'm shooting on, you know, labrums that are attached by a strand of hair, like, I can still do what I got to do. And the Sun won the Marina Mabry trade.
They did.
That is a parting thought before I kick it over to you guys, because, boy, they needed her for that one.
Yeah. Greer, what were your thoughts on the game?
I guess my main thought is, like, I guess I just really want to talk about the Fever. Indiana, I mean, shout out to Connecticut. They, like Vegas, just made their 6th straight semifinal in the WNBA playoffs. So the consistency has been there for them, you know, all the time. It's really about getting over the hump. Simple as that. There really is not much else to talk about when it comes to them, if I'm being honest. Like, we
talked about Marina last game. Like we've like, I feel you. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Can you do it? But going back to the Fever a bit, I feel like they exceeded expectations this year, and the front office didn't exactly know what they had in Caitlin. Like, they knew they were getting her all season long, but all season long, it felt like, because I definitely recall saying this in previous post games, it's just like, they didn't know how good she would be and how soon she would be good. Because if you did, this is like one of just a principle I have in basketball, period, across leagues, across levels. I need vets that have played consequential basketball in the playoffs. You're not going anywhere with vets who have never played meaningful basketball. And none of the vets on the Fever have that kind of experience.
Yeah.
And that's where they fell short to me, right? Like,
Mhm.
You see, you're talking about keeping it respectful about Kelsey Mitchell. Okay, I'm going to keep it respectful. Super sorry her father died right before the season started and all of that. But calling D'Angelo Russell to help you do anything when it comes to playoff basketball is fucking crazy. I'm a Laker fan.
The memes are nuts. Yeah, the memes were nuts.
That man, they need to put that man on a watch list. Do not pick up the phone. Calling D'Angelo Russell for this.
You would have been better calling Tamika Catchings. You would have been better calling some other players that played in Fever, you know.
Anyone but D'Lo.
Anyone but D'Lo. So
D'Lo,
D buffering.
What was Jordan Poole not available?
You know,
like the fuck.
But yeah, the ending from Kelsey, if we want to kind of get into that,
was really hard.
Those last 2 minutes, you have it was like 3 possessions where Caitlin doesn't touch the ball, and like there was one of the possessions, Kelsey just kind of like fullback dived like into the paint at one point, and it's just
she panicked.
Yeah,
she shot a 3. Yeah. She missed her 3, ran in, and I don't know if it was, I think it was AT in the paint, but like she caught her own rebound, and instead of going in and drawing the contact, which she usually does, I think she was trying to go for the 3 instead, which like analytics brain, man, like fuck. Looked for wherever, I'm guessing she thought Caitlin was there, and
at
Caitlin made the run toward the baseline. But it just, and immediately after that, on the next 2 possessions, reverts back to the Kelsey Mitchell of the early year and the Kelsey Mitchell of old.
Yeah.
And to your point, Greer, this is a player who has been a veteran in this league for a long time, playing her first playoff basketball in the W. And real first consequential basketball ever. Her Ohio State teams never got by the Sweet 16. You know, so there are... Like, it's not Elite 8 Final Four championship level basketball at either level. So this is a new thing for her in crunch time. And you are absolutely right. You know, I think it was weird to youth movement this in the way it felt like the Sparks did. But like, it came because, at least in my opinion, of an underestimation of what Caitlin Clark was going to be in this league. Because I would imagine the thought is, maybe we sneak into the 8 seed. She learns on the fly. We build around the roster now. Like, this was not the idea of like, we're getting a first team all WNBA player immediately.
Yeah.
And I wonder if because the drafts over the last 4 or 5 years have been full of fool's gold in that way, at least early on, we talked about this with Sabrina recently, like there's been so much fool's gold at the top of these drafts in the last 5 years. I genuinely wonder if there was some prevailing wisdom in there, like, oh, she's going to be like the rest of these. Like, she'll be good, but she won't be great immediately. And then this draft class broke the mold in the way that the EDD, Skylar, and not BG. Who the hell was the third in that draft?
No, you're right. That's a 3.
Oh, it was, okay, yeah. So it's that draft, you know? Yeah. It's a shame. Kelsey's had a phenomenal year.
Yeah.
You know, amazing push after the Olympic break. Mm-hmm. They're not in the 6th seed without her.
No.
But boy, if that 2-minute span is not enough to get you in the lab and ready to just take heads off next season and come back and do this with Caitlin, boy, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the reality, like look at the lineup that they closed the game with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you started the game. Timmy started the game
Timmy
today.
Starts over Nilissa Smith.
Over Nilissa, who's also still only a third-year player. Timmy wasn't even in the league last year, right? Like, yeah, I just think it shows how much the Indiana front office just did not think that they would be here and weren't ready to capitalize on this moment. Because, again, they just beat the Sun, like, once in the last 3 weeks, you know, on their floor, I believe, too, in Connecticut, you know. So they were certainly a team that was capable, but they need Andrew, I think you'll appreciate this. They need a wartime conciliating. Like, that's just the fact.
Yeah, dog, straight up. Like,
they need
not
it. The veterans on their sideline are not it. You know what I'm saying? So, like, this offseason is going to be very, very interesting for the Fever because, as we know, windows in the WNBA are getting shorter and shorter with all of the things that are happening. But I also do want to say, shout out to Caitlin and Aaliyah Boston for
that was going to be the next thing because, man.
In their second ever playoff game.
Yeah, they did what they're supposed to do. Like, they came and did what they're supposed to do.
Tonight, they're both awesome.
Yeah.
They're built for it.
Yeah. They're here. Like, it's time for everyone else around them to catch up to them at this point. Yeah, I'll be very interested in seeing what the offseason looks like for Indiana. I mean, you gotta get a 4. It feels inevitable.
Alyssa Smith, you are a Golden State Valkyrie.
Yeah, welcome. Well, yeah, really. I mean, DJNA was tweeting after the game, free her. So that's gone. I don't know.
The only thing that sucks about this is that it feels like there's going to be a lot of shady shit said in the exit. And I hope that's not the case, but it feels like it's going to trend that way, especially if they decide to part with her.
I will be there no matter what.
They need a 4.
Yeah.
And it's not a super forward heavy draft coming up. So you will probably have to build in free agency here.
I don't think that they should even be looking at young players. I don't.
I think I'll tell you right now, if I could get anyone, I'm calling LA up. Hey, y'all trying to rebuild for real? What's the asking price for De'Arica Hamby? That's like the dream.
That's not actually the
dream pickup for me. Like that might not be like completely impossible. Like Hamby feels like that feels like the perfect fit across the board.
You know who my pick is, because there are good forwards, assuming like a couple of these contracts aren't restructured and immediately re-signed. There are some good forwards on the market this year. The one that I am particularly interested in, especially with Erica Wheeler coming off the books, Satu Sabali. She feels like that she could be a third.
I could, yeah. Absolutely.
But there are a bunch of other contracts that are coming up here, like Izzy Harrison, Mercedes Russell, Hines Allen, Shine Parker Tyus, up at the top. I went from lowest up, okay? Because I'm not
like the middle, please.
I'm not gonna sit here and say like Alyssa Thomas is a free agent. That's entirely possible.
Yeah.
But like the top of the list there in terms of AAV is like AT, Stewie, NECA, Sabali, I think is the higher end of the attainable ones that you have.
That sounds right. Yeah.
In that grouping.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm
Natasha Howard is leaving. I
don't like it.
No, look, I watched the Sabrina Liberty, Natasha Howard experiment. It didn't work. It won't work there. That's like just simply put,
before, if I'm not mistaken. She's been
on
that team before. I think she used to be in Indiana Fever.
Tosh Howard, I think she was, yeah.
Before she went to Seattle, I think that's the team she was on. I
think so.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, obviously like this off season. I mean, I don't. It feels like this could be the one where like the ability to jump in the standings and everything has come way sooner than I think anyone had anticipated. Frankly,
agreed.
So I think there's just decisions to be made. Is Christy sides who you're running with? Like what do y'all think? Is Christy? Are y'all rocking with Christy going forward?
I think it's. Man, I don't know.
I have a zag.
It's a precarious situation right now, right? You just saw how the Sparks got rid of Kurt, or mutually parted ways with Kurt. So the pressure is just different than it ever has been in the W.
Yes.
So, I mean, honestly, it's getting Caitlin and Aaliyah in a room and saying, "What do you guys think?"
Yeah,
it just is. It just is. What do you guys think? And also them developing some more chemistry during the off season so that they can truly hit the ground running.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am interested in seeing what Caitlin Clark with an entire off season and not playing overseas basketball ends up
with a good night's rest. Looks like.
We didn't need to ask her that in the post game, but c'est la vie. We'll talk about that a little later. My zag is I'm riding with sides. Yeah.
I don't think that's
the reason.
The worst thing right now.
Well, this comes from a place of realism. Lynn Dunn loves her. She's not parting with her. Like, even at the beginning of the year, man, you would see the stuff that Lynn would retweet, like, coaches need time, you need to be patient. Like, she very clearly believes in sides as a coach. And, it's worth noting, like, Lynn has been a head coach herself. Like, she is, while she is the GM, like, she is someone that clearly is trying to help Christy Sides get used to being a coach. And I do think, like, look, she got exposed in the playoffs. It's her first playoff series. Stephanie White's a great coach, man. Like, if Cheryl Reeve didn't do what she did this year, Stephanie White is, she was second on my coach of the year ballot, not for anybody else but our own individual awards. But I do think that Sides needs time to grow and develop. And look, nobody, Becky Hammond, Brondello, nobody has had to deal with this. Like what we got this year. Sides even said it in the post game, like, and it's not just like the Caitlin phenomenon. It's all of the things that have come along with Caitlin that aren't even necessarily about Caitlin, which we'll talk about too. Like, she had to deal with all these things and do all these things. And now you have a year of that and you can figure out how to handle it better come next year. So yeah, man, I don't see why you wouldn't ride with Sides at least another year, at least one more year. Maybe she's Doug Collins. Maybe she's Paul Westhead and Pat Riley and Phil Jackson are sitting out there waiting. Like, that is entirely possible. Like Bill Lambier to Becky Hammond. Like, we've seen it in this league before. At the same time, I wouldn't pull the plug after 1 year when you're a 6th seed when people thought you'd be an 8.
Yeah, I'm with you. Any other thoughts from the game itself on the court before we move on to off the court? I think that about sums it up. I mean, the
last thing I have is, it is insane to me that Marina went 3 of 10 from 3, and like her 3 threes were all
dude, they felt dude. You would thought they were like worth 10 points.
Literally,
it was crazy. Yeah,
it's like you have a group of introverts that do the project, and then you have the one extrovert that does no work, but shows up for the presentation and fucking crushes it. Like, that was Marina in that game. But you know what? That's what they needed her for. You just need another body to hit big shots and get their own shot. And they caught Caitlin on a rotation, and Marina ripped one right in her face, and that was the dagger. Also,
she did her own version of the HBO.
Yeah,
poetic for real.
Yeah.
You know what my other game thought is before we go on to the off the court stuff and get a little serious? Ryan Rucco's "You Bet"
fire.
It's starting to go up my my rankings of like basket / touchdown calls. Like, You Bet is a like that, and it, like, it's not bang quite yet, but I could see in 15 years You Bet being a ubiquitous the way Mike Breen's like bang is at the same time. Because like, even in college, when he's like You Bet and you're on the other side of that shit, bro, that's so demoralizing. Like, I'll be honest, like, from a story perspective, like, I was rooting for Caitlin in the NCAA championship last year just because I love the story. Like, I am a narratives guy, and I felt that the narrative of like her basically doing a Cheryl Swoops redux almost 30 years later exactly would have been a pretty cool story. But we end up in this situation where like, Tess Johnson, You Bet. I'm like, oh, it's over.
Oh, his nose is even better.
No. Oh, Rucco.
Yeah.
We love you, buddy.
No, but I'm with you on that. I like the You Bet. Greer, what did you have a closing point on the on the court aspect of this?
I mean, I think 2 things of concern for Connecticut, just looking ahead, is like Bree Jones and Ty Harris.
Yes, good point. Yeah,
because Minnesota is a pretty deep team too, and so that just changes the complexity of Connecticut if they're not 100% and ready to go The series kicks off on Sunday, so they got some days to
Mhm.
get people rehab and try to get them into, ready to be key contributors again. But I think that's just something to monitor.
Yeah, 100%. It did kind of like, I don't know, it might have just been gamesmanship, to be honest. Like the talk was like surrounding Ty, like it was kind of gonna kind of be day-to-day ish, kind of game time decision-y. But I kind of am leaning more towards like that was a little bit of gamesmanship, to be honest. So we'll just have to see. But that's a great point because Minnesota absolutely has the depth and is healthy like across the board. Like they're pretty much good to go. Pivoting off the court. From this game, I'll start off with the statement that the WNBA put out. I have that here. Let me pull it up. The WNBA is a competitive league with some of the most elite athletes in the world. While we welcome a growing fan base, the WNBA will not tolerate racist, derogatory, or threatening comments made about players, teams, and anyone associated or affiliated with the league. League security is actively monitoring threat-related activity and will work directly with teams and arenas to take appropriate measures to include involving law enforcement as necessary. Obviously, this has been the topic of so many conversations across this season, especially specifically revolving around the Indiana Fever. This statement comes out right after they're eliminated, like literally, like right after the game. A lot of people saying, "Where has this been?" A lot of kind of differing reactions to it. I mean, this is where we're at right now, like within the W space, is dealing with these things. And like I say,
Can you pull up that last comment, please?
yeah, this one right here.
Oh God, I'm so jealous of
I
you.
wish.
What a calm life you
Man.
must lead, Magnolia. No wonder
Yeah.
you're obvious as a flower.
Yeah,
You must just be.
I haven't seen one of those in weeks.
Incredible.
But yeah, I mean, I guess just open floor aspect here, like kind of however you guys want to take this. We saw the post game comments as well from Alyssa Thomas. I can pull those quotes up as well just to reference them properly.
Drew, do you want to start while he looks, or do you want me to go?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of with Magnolia. Like, listen, man, I'm a Black woman living in America, and I have a little bit of privilege, but I also have a lot of power and control over my own life and what I want to consume, what I don't want to consume. And we know literacy overall is down in this country, media literacy, internet, like all of it. We just need to readjust what we give attention. And I think Stephanie White absolutely hit the nail on the head with her comments post game today about the media's responsibility in all of this.
Right.
I think
I have that.
I think
I have that where
it's a lot more selective about who they credential for these kinds of events and games and stuff like that, as well as teams, because WNBA doesn't handle all of them. But yeah, I just think, like Stephanie White said, it's a microcosm of the larger problems in our country and our society. And, it's super easy to make Black women who are gay the target of all of this vitriol. You know what I mean? Like, but also, like, everybody's got to take a little bit of personal responsibility. When you're egging it on, when you're engaging or in engagement baiting, kind of, right? And I wish everybody could just be honest about how they've behaved this year. Like, there's like just some people's work you'll never see me engaging or retweeting, even if it's to be like, shame on you. Why would I amplify that at all?
Yeah,
that's kind of how
Yeah, I'm with you. I do, Andrew. Before I just saw something as well on Twitter. Nalissa Smith just tweeted and said, so for here, let me just share screen real quick. It'll be easiest.
Oh, God.
So during the playoff series, we saw this where she sent DJ Carrington, her girlfriend, flowers during the series, and she said, "Anyways, now that I can respond freely, my girlfriend has been getting death threats, called all type of shit. So sending her flowers to make sure her mental health is okay, then cool, cry about it. But obviously, the highlight there really is death threats followed, all of that. Just another kind of added layer to all of this, frankly. And then,
I will say, the players
yeah.
deserve to feel safe in their workplace. Let me say that.
Yeah.
I do want to be very clear about that. Players deserve to be, just like anybody, deserve to feel safe in their workplace.
Yeah.
The teams, the WNBA, like there's just a lot of work that needs to be done in between now and the next season about like crisis management,
That's an
like all of
understatement.
that kind of shit. You know, like in the
Mhm.
CBA, if there's going to be more security built in for teams like that, like right now it seems like there's like one security person for each team. There probably needs to be more, similar to what the NBA teams have, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, the WNBA's definitely got to be better about fostering a safe work environment, and the franchises have got to be better about fostering a safe work environment for the players. But like, no one is entitled to be on social media.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. 100%. If you want, just real quick to give the context of the post game quotes as well from Stephanie and AT. You mentioned the Stephanie quote, and just a piece of that is we in the media, because she does work on TV stuff. We in the media have to do a better job of not allowing trolls and social media to become the story. I feel like we have allowed trolls and social media to frame the narrative of what the story is, and it's unacceptable. So to your point, Greer, of kind of putting gas on the fire in ways by providing the attention. And then I think Alyssa Thomas also was strong in her comments. I have that as well. I can share that. Really, read the quote there, but the gist of it is the Indiana Fever fan base has, and that's a very broad generalization.
And again, is it even the Indiana Fever fan base?
And I think that is another part where we saw, like, for example, Caitlin Clark likes the Taylor Swift post, and we see kind of the turnaround of some of the fans in the comments there. So like, it's a very broad kind of generalization of the Fever fan base. There's a lot of kind of factors and variables that play into that. But I think the biggest part here is, basketball is headed in a great direction, but we don't want fans that are going to degrade us and call us racial things. We already see what's happening in the world and what we have to deal with in that aspect. We come to play basketball for our job. It's fun, but we don't want to go to work every day and have social media blown up over things like that. It's uncalled for, and something needs to be done, whether it's the team checking their fans or the league. There's no time for it anymore. I think, to my understanding, that's pretty much the large majority of the context kind of going into this conversation between those two quotes and the WNBA statement. Andrew, floor is yours.
If I run long, just cut me off.
Okay, noted.
There is a lot of blame to go around here. And I don't say blame in like a finger pointy, like talking at the individuals, right? Because when we talk about the complexity of this league, from its politics to its demographics to its makeup, you cannot talk about the league and the coverage and the things around it in such a diametric way, or have such a dichotomy, I guess, in speaking about it. The first component, to Stephanie White's point, is, and this is one of the reasons we started No Cap Space, it's one of the reasons we love what we do, is that, we are beholden to subscribers and we don't have to live in the SEO machine. There's plenty of people on social media. There's plenty of people in positions where they're in the chair on networks. That applies to First Take. That applies to pre and post game shows. That applies to CBS HQ. That applies to NBC Sports. That everywhere. Everyone is beholden to the click machine. And I've been really frustrated as a person that is full-time in this business and media, watching my colleagues talk about how terrible all of this dialogue is while simultaneously feeding the beast. And I understand that we all have jobs. I understand that we all have a role to play. We all have a face we wear in the workplace, and we have a face we wear elsewhere, right? If you know that and you have a self-awareness of what your role in the ecosystem is, shut the fuck up. Point blank, period. Shut the fuck up. Because you do not help anybody by going on Twitter and talking about how terrible all of the different media points and talking points and rundown choices and producer choices and discussions are when you yourself engage in the same behavior. That is nonsense. Either own and understand what your role is and the moral compromises that you are making for a check, or walk off your job. Straight up. Because your morality and your ethics cannot be selective here. If you are someone that truly stands against feeding this machine that leads to this vitriol and this misogyny and this racism, you should not, if your ethics are straight up and down, be contributing to that because it pays you the check. That is the exact thing that you are going after Caitlin Clark for, of making a moral compromise because there is money to be made. And I understand that is the system that we all live in. Like, this is capitalism, baby, and we all are playing a role. Like, call it what it is in this way, in this respect. But what has bothered me about the media component of this year is people acting like they do not have a choice. You do have a choice. And we have seen multiple times over the years that deplatforming and not giving credence to viewpoints works. Don't believe me? Remember how big Milo Yiannopoulos was in the political sphere about 8 years ago? Milo is now the lackey manager for Kanye West. And by the way, where the fuck is Kanye now? It works.
Also, live gas, allegedly.
Yeah, exactly. He's on the moon.
Do you have the nitrous?
But like, deplatforming these things work. If you don't give them smoke, they don't control the apparatus and they don't control the discussion. And this is where I'll get to the W's piece. The W has to be a little more judicious of how they hand out credentials. Because if you are a league that is
your own product
for all of it,
they've been passive this entire season.
Entire time. It's to our point that we've always made about the W, from its media to its league. It is a reactive operation. Tonight's situation was a reactive situation, a reaction, not to the racism that we've seen levied at black women in this league, but because a fan yelled at Caitlin Clark, which makes that shit look even worse.
Yeah.
Also, it took you 30 minutes to write this fucking statement, but you allowed your commissioner to go on CNBC and basically say the direct opposite of this statement.
Turn it up.
Can you imagine how good this would have looked if this was the statement you chose to read off on CNBC instead of being where we are now? Mm-hmm. It is reactive choices. Everything we do in media from the W side is reactive. It's all done in reaction. There is no proactivity in how we're discussing A'ja Wilson because we're reacting to 1,000 points. We're reacting to the lack of a shoe. We're reacting to all of these other things that she does instead of proactively putting you on game and talking about it before it occurs. Outkick should not have a credential. The dude, whoever they were that was cheering on press row at the Aces game last year, that Jiggy had to go out as the communications person for that franchise and put out a press release that says if you are credentialed in media, you cannot cheer on press row. That person should have their credential.
And I'll tell you, I've seen this happen at covering games. Credential, I've seen it. Like,
if you are in pressers repeatedly calling players the wrong names or mispronouncing their names, you should not have a credential. This shit does not fly in big leagues. And the WNBA needs to be more judicious about how it hands out credentials. The attention is here. You do not have to beg anymore. So this is a failing of the W for not understanding what was going to come along here. And they were slow to react as they have been. But it is extremely revealing and extremely insulting that this statement only comes out because a fan yelled at Caitlin on the floor. Not only that, these arenas and on top of it, these owners, the event staff, the GMs, You guys are in these arenas every night, man. Like, I know that people have called within the arenas about people that they think are saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing. Those calls make it up to event ownership. Like, that is the way this stuff works. And so that is the problem to me with each individual franchise that they own. The issue with those people is that you have probably heard of an uptick of complaints in your arena and you have done nothing about it. Get more ushers, hire more security, be more hard ass about getting people the hell out of the arena if they are being called in as having done something wrong. The fans need to call that stuff in. It's not just like if the people around you are co-signing on that behavior. I saw someone on Reddit shared their experience about this and said they were at a Mercury game and, you know, there was a Fever fan, or what they interpreted as a Caitlin Clark fan who was there for Caitlin Clark, I guess you could say, behind them saying all sorts of nasty, you know, shit about Brittany Griner, and they called the event staff, and event staff came over and the dude shut up for the rest of the game. And this poster said that they were upset about the fact that people around them were kind of like laughing and co-signing on it. But you know what happened when they called event staff? That dude stopped for the rest of the game. That is the policy that needs to be had going forward. You know, racist shit comes into the stadium, you call it, get them the fuck out. These are not the type of fans that we want in here. And this is going to be the last two. I appreciate you letting me run long here. We have to draw a delineation between Fever fans and Caitlin Clark fans. There is a years-long psychological study about why this person in particular seems to charge up folks on that side of the aisle so significantly when we have had other white, apolitical, great white hope types in this league before. And they have come from places that aren't necessarily super progressive in that way, like the universities they've come from, mind you. And so I think it is interesting that this girl has been the one to bring fans out, not just in this way, but in with this energy, you know, because like typically if you court that, you get it, right? Mm-hmm. And like these fans didn't come out like this on the politics alone for Sophie Cunningham, you know, like this, like there's something weird at play with just like the sociology of the country here that I think is really fascinating.
Could it be like bots and shit like that? Like what we've been saying all season long, that a lot of these people are not real people too.
Like I think that's amplified, but I mean, we saw, but in fairness, we saw and heard experiences tonight that would indicate that those people that those people are there. I do agree with you that I think it's much more amplified because the way the media machine, you know, over there on the right works. But I also think, again, we are taking entirely too much time dedicating our lives and our discourse to letting them run the discourse. You know what I mean? There is no fucking reason an Outkick story from a reporter that just showed up should spur First Take and
both sides like at all.
Yeah, like, dude, there's absolutely zero reason for that to move the needle on everything else. Like political like we've done this in political media before, where like back in 2016, we saw this a lot. Like something would originate on Fox and then it would end up, it typically would like originate on like OAN, and then it would get to Fox, and then it would get to the big three. And now, you know, the Sunday shows are talking about it with their politician guests. Like the same thing happened this year, where like Outkick shit and like stuff that's way the hell out there that we don't even need to fucking give any credence to because they're not rational, good faith actors, are the ones that are powering the entire discussion cycle about this. Like we have the power to ignore some of this shit. And I do think
people would recognize that. That's like my big bone to pick. It's like we're feeding right into the bullshit. Mm-hmm. And it's clear today if you just use both eyes.
Yes. And that's my final piece. I think the players have played into this stuff some. And look, white guy in a place of privilege, right? Like I am not going to even sit here and pretend to imagine what it is like to receive a death threat that's laden with N-words if you are a black woman in this league. I'm not even going to try and understand like the depth of hurt that must feel like and how unsafe you must feel if you get that over and over and over and over again. But to me, it feels like a lot of the energy in reaction to that is misplaced because it's pushed towards this kid. And I don't want to use kid pejoratively. She's a 22-year-old woman. She's an adult. She can vote. She can drink. She can make her own choices. But to me, I think her coming out and saying something, as evidenced, Tyler, the way you said by the Taylor Swift thing, shows that her words don't really travel. Like, she represents something that is beyond herself. In a sad way, her agency's been taken completely out of this. She is an avatar for grievance at this point, which is why I think the decision to place it all on her is misguided by the players, because the people you need to guide it towards is the league. That stuff needs to go to the league office. And it's crazy to me, and this is the one piece of smoke I do have for the players on this. Nneka Ogwumike, in Seattle's exit interviews today, said that she is having trouble getting every player in the WNBPA together to be able to vote to opt out of the current CBA like they are allowed to. Think about that. You are facing a massive financial windfall as a league, the opportunity to get paid what you finally deserve. And the president of the Players Association is coming out on record saying, I'm having trouble getting people to want to buy in to negotiate for their own betterment. That is revealing. And in the case of this stuff, is further revealing, because there's all of this smoke for Caitlin Clark, but when you are needed as players to collectively get together to do something about this, we are in our own fiefdoms fighting. And the reality should be, if this, if you want to live up to the activist league moniker, the smoke you have is for the league not protecting you, for your owners not protecting you, not for the kid, but for the millionaires and billionaires that own your teams, that are skimping out on security, that are skimping out on event staff, that aren't taking their concerns seriously.
Sounds eerily familiar to like voter registration and voter turnout in this country.
Yeah.
Like,
it's very similar.
Sports is not unique in that way. You know what I mean? Like, they're more visible, sure, than lots of other people in this, but yeah.
And just to wrap,
very familiar.
Yeah, it is. It's a microcosm. Sports is a microcosm. It always has been. That's why when people say sports isn't political, like, no, the game is an escape, but the sport is political. But as I wrap here, what I will say is this. This league has shown that collective action is what makes a difference. And the smoke that you should have should never be lateral or downward when you are trying to upend structures that are inherently oppressive. The way you defeat oppressive institutional structures of power is by banding together and showing your power as a collective, not as an individual. And so for them to be attacking laterally, to me, feels like the great miss of the year on their end, because at some point they all could have realized the enemy here in this sense, the people not protecting us are above us. And that's where the fight is supposed to be and supposed to come. And instead, we are now sitting here and have been sitting here for 5.5 months talking about how one woman should be answered for people that don't even see her personhood. That to me is the great problem with all this. The WNBA has been slow, but unfortunately, the collective of the players have been slower. And that to me is what is a little bit worrisome about the future of what this league holds, because they are content, as Drea Carter said on SportsCenter tonight. The quote was, "We are fine growing slower if it means we keep these people out of the league." That's not what you do. The way you win is as a collective to say, no, you do this our way, because we are the majority of the 144. And that includes Caitlin Clark, and that includes Sabrina Ionescu and Stewie and Paige and Cam and everybody else. And it is their option to decide what degrees of advocacy they're going to take, whether it is just what I would argue is aesthetic and verbal, the way it is for Paige and Cam, whether it is through legitimate action, as we have seen through someone like Breanna Stewart, or if it is just by not platforming the noise at all, the way it does for Caitlin and Sabrina. And the sooner everyone realizes that they are on that team and that the people that you need to push against are the ones that have the money to invest in you and your safety, the easier that we will be.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I will respond to this real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, yes, this is true. Like there are levels to the level, I guess you could say. And I think
tiers with
yes, like I think your point is well taken, but I believe, Magnolia, to this point, all of them are employees. Like and I'm taking this from kind of like a purely capitalistic train of thought. Like they are the labor. They are not the management. They are not the ownership. They all represent labor in this scenario. Now, there are stratifications to the labor where, various people enjoy differing degrees of privilege. And those things shift pretty constantly. Like, not to go too off the wheel here, but like, I talk about this, and Tyler, I know we've talked about this. Like, we're Italian Americans in this country. Like, there was a period where we were lower on the rung than white Anglos that existed within this country first, and the proximity to whiteness allowed Italian Americans to climb over people when the reality was Italian Americans should have been allying with people of color because the treatment was more similar, and that would have upended the structure, but they cozied up to whiteness, and that's how we got where we were. Within this situation, all the labor is the same, but the strata are different. And so the labor needs to collectively get together and say that the problem is not infighting within the labor. The problem is in management and ownership. And that's where I would say that similarity kind of starts.
Yeah. I mean,
I was like, let me fucking out. 5 months.
I'm tired, bro.
That's what we do here, right? Like, no shade, right? I'm me and Shawnee y'all do a lot of the heavy lifting for us. And that is how they should be using Caitlin.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Like, and that's something too, though, that we talk about with like Paige and Cam, because I hate to like address every little piece of criticism, but like I did see something that said in one of our recent columns that like it's accusing Paige and Cam of performative activism, and it's not performative activism, but at the same time, like action speaks louder than words, and sometimes action isn't in something that you see, and we give pats on the head, at least in my opinion. I think we give pats on the head to white people too much for just saying the right thing. And I'm someone that rejects the term allyship outright. I do not think you deserve a title or a distinguishment for doing literally the moral and ethically correct thing of taking care of your people, regardless of creed, color, sexuality, whatever. Like, you need to be just a good ass person. You should not get a pat on the head because you say the right things. And that, to me, I think is where we've lost the plot on Caitlin, is like, she needs to say the right things and say, well, if she does the right things, then how do we move from there? Now we got to figure out what right things she does. And that's a whole other discussion that we'll probably get to come the off season. But I guess my final thought, man, is, these conversations aren't going to end, but I do hope that as we get further away from this, the culture war that took a break from Caitlin Clark, mind you, to attack Iman Khalif and the Algerian boxer during the Olympics, that shows you that none of this shit is about a person. This stuff is all about causes and amplification of bad faith arguments, which also helps the grifters keep making a little bit of money. And so I'm curious to see if they come back around and latch back on, or if by this time next year we've found something else. I hope to God it's the latter, because I do not want to do this again next year.
Yeah, I'm tired. I'm tired, man. We've been doing this for 2.5 years now. Like it's
we have enough lip service when it comes to allies.
Yeah, it's exhausting. Yeah, I mean, going forward for the rest of this season, presumably we'll be talking on court, but it's also very important to be able to have these types of conversations.
I'm sorry, can you pull up the Sanger scene? Zinger scene. I still think
Me too.
like you still have to just meet people where they are in life. She's 22, out of the state of Iowa for the very first time, for real. Like truly around people from all different walks of life, all age groups, all backgrounds, all like we also got to give her a little bit of time. I'm not even saying grace, but just give her a little time to get some life experience. Like she's still, we all are, but especially a 22-year-old. If you're waiting on a 22-year-old to be like your avatar for equality and fairness and shit like that, you're gonna be waiting till you're blue in the face, baby. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, and look, my only thing is this, man. We've had a lot of milkshake ducks in the last like 6 to 8 years. You feel me? Like we've had too many milkshake ducks where like I don't trust words in the same way from my folk anymore, because I know that some old tweets are always right around the corner.
The dreaded Twitter search.
I know they pulled hers already, and they're supposed to be rap lyrics. They already pulled hers. I know they ran.
Nothing's more dangerous in this world than a diss you. Like,
and look, I think one last interesting piece of this that I think is something I want people to think a little bit about, before we go. I hate giving homework, but whatever, something while you're being an insomniac like me, you'll think about. Twitter had a very certain ideological bent under Jack Dorsey, like typically a left-leaning app that was primarily handled by media and people of color, specifically Black Twitter, which is famous at this point, right? And you're talking about a league with a lot of players that are between the ages of 25 and 32 that are Twitter generation people. And I do think it is very interesting that this year of all years, we ended up in a scenario where as Twitter makes a decidedly ideological shift with Elon Musk, all of this other stuff starts to come. And I do think it is an interesting thought exercise of like, if the Twitter of old existed, does this play out in the same way or fashion? Yeah. And I do think that that's something that I can forgive players for not being hip to game on, because like how many of them are reading the trades, right? So, I can imagine for someone like a Dejanay Carrington, beyond just like the amount of people that are here now, right? I can definitely imagine an idea where like, for the most part, like, yeah, like there's been shittiness on the app before, but it's not this crazy. And then as Twitter starts to make this turn and gets like much more lawless, you start to be on the receiving end of a lot more heinous shit. And it directly coincides, not by Caitlin Clarkson making, but it coincides with her entrance to the league. Mm-hmm. Like what happens if Caitlin comes 2 years earlier and the platform's still run by Jack? Like, does this play out, in a similar way? It just, there's just such a crazy ass confluence here. And that's why I hesitate the way some of my other colleagues are to lay this all at Caitlin's feet.
Yeah.
That to me is I think the biggest problem.
Yeah, I feel you.
Sleepy time.
Well, I'm glad, and I'm always very happy that we're able to have nuanced conversations about these things, because I feel like they're very few and far between, especially in this space at times. So, but that's what we're here for. That's what we do this for, amongst many other things. So I know,
game, baby.
Hopefully
be the content change you want to see in the world.
Yes. But we will be, rest of the way going forward, presumably should be some really good damn basketball, and hopefully nothing else. We'll see, but man, fingers crossed.
I promised you guys that Sunday Shawnee will be here after Vegas and New York.
She shows up conveniently as I start wedding week. Unbelievable.
Oh, that's right.
Nice. I am phone off starting Sunday, buddy.
Right. You're right. Oh, man.
Shawnee, if you've made it an hour 20 into this live.
Unless you're like producer Shawnee, don't watch the content.
You know what's so fucked, man? On Substack, you can see like they give a star rating to how people ingest your content. Mm-hmm. And like all of us are like 5-star. Like anytime something shows up, like we read our shit when it hits our inbox. Mm-hmm. Start as like a 2-star.
Fake. Yeah. He's getting added in the chat right now.
I am gonna,
He's getting added. He's getting added.
Run the outlet, and you're 2-star in your content, bro. Come on,
He's getting added.
Help our like count. That's crazy.
He's getting added in the chat tonight. But yeah, we'll be back for another post game. I don't think we have.
Dana, do we need to be on B Sky? Is that what you're telling me?
I don't need another one. I quit. I quit Twitter.
There's so many. But no, we'll be back Sunday, right? We'll be the first games for round 2. So both of them on Sunday. So we'll have a fire doubleheader on deck. So we'll be here for that. I know we got a couple interviews lined up that are in kind of in the. I don't think they're officially scheduled yet, but they're coming. We got some good ones coming. We got some good ones on deck that are in the works right now that we're all very excited about. So we'll see y'all for sure on Sunday. Be on the lookout as well. Make sure you're tapped in with the Substack, because that is where majority of our content lies, is on the Substack, to make sure you're not missing anything print. We had an article go up yesterday in regards to Kurt Miller and who might be replacing him in Los Angeles. So be on the lookout for that. Everything you can
late previews are coming next week.
Yeah,
they start next week.
Previews. It's about that time, y'all. And so because it's about that time, I think you should probably go head over to Home Field, use code NOCAP, get your 15% off, and rep your team. I'm still waiting on my order, but I'll be showing it off as soon as it gets here. So, but yeah, like I said, we're always happy to be able to talk ball, but also do it in the right way. So great night tonight, y'all. Thank y'all so much for being here. Like, subscribe, hit the bell so you're notified when we go live on Sunday. Like I said, we're going to be here all throughout the playoffs. You're not going to want to miss it. And only the hate and the stakes only go up. So y'all know what time it is here in the No Cat Space. I'm very excited, but we will see y'all on Sunday.